Okay, today I want to talk about remakes. Nowadays, they've kind of gotten a bad name due to a lot of them just being pointless cash grabs. Yeah, looking at you, Disney. However, when done correctly, they can be very enjoyable, and in some cases vitally necessary. One, they can keep a story or characters alive throughout the years. Just look at characters like Batman and how many variants he has. All are different interpretations of one character, but all are considered the same character. Other times it can be used as a cultural exchange by putting the same story into a familiar setting to a new audience it's trying to reach. And today I wanted to look at a remake that fits the latter, that being The Magnificent Seven, an old school western film produced and directed by John Sturges that was even placed in the United States of America's National Film Registry for how good it was. Now what better thing to compare it to than the original story it remade, The Seven Samurai, a Toho samurai film directed and written by Akira Kurosawa and produced by Sojiro Martoki? Oh, and I'm just going to have to do this now. I'm probably going to mispronounce a lot of these Japanese names, so I apologize in advance. These are two legendary names in the world of cinema. In fact, Sturges even said the high point of his career was hearing that Kurosawa actually liked his film. If by chance you haven't heard of them, I highly recommend you checking out some of their works. The film Seven Samurai is actually considered to be one of the greatest films in cinema history, so I wanted to compare the two just to see what was changed for a Western audience, while managing to keep the core of what made the original a true classic. Now, because the movies are so similar, instead of breaking the video into different parts, dissecting different aspects of the film, I'm just going to go through them both, side by side as they go, and point out the changes as they happen before giving my final thoughts on why it works as a remake. Both films open with bandits threatening a group of poor farmers. The bandit leaders in Seven Samurai appear to look like samurai and only shown on a hill overlooking their village for a few minutes, mostly for exposition. They say that they intend to attack a village they've already hit before when their crops come in and they're harvested by the farmers. It just so happens that a farmer gets to overhear this entire conversation and warns the rest of the village. In Magnificent Seven, we actually see the bandit leader named Calvera interact with the villagers, acting very friendly at first as he has a one-sided conversation over people's lack of faith, while literally taking their supplies as though he owns the place. As it goes on, the villager he is talking to answers him back once, and Calvera just slaps the man right in the face for it, before asking him to think of how hard his job is to rob them. When he starts to leave, he mentions he will be back, leading to a different villager trying to slay him with a machete. And you know what they say about bringing machete to a gunfight? Both sets of farmers are now panicking and beginning to argue about what to do, with some wanting to appease the bandits out of fear and others that want to stop them. Seeking counsel, they talk with their village's elders, coming to two different plans. In Seven Samurai, the elders say to hire samurai, the Japanese equivalent to a medieval knight, to defend their village. However, some of the people say that samurai won't help them as farmers are looked down on by being the lowest class of this society. Plus, they have no money to pay them to do it. The elder tells them to look for a hungry samurai so they can pay them in food. Which won't be hard as this era in Japan's history is known as the Sengoku period, was fraught with civil wars, supply shortages, and social unrest. In the Magnificent Seven, the plan is to go across the Mexican border into America and buy guns to fight Calvera, as America has literally always been littered with guns. The group send a few men to accomplish the task that run into challenges and changes as they go on. In Seven Samurai, the group finds it hard to recruit skilled samurai, as no one wants to work for the farmers, and the ones that do are cowardly weaklings. They are even mocked for it by other peasants in the city. Things go on like this until they run into an unusual sight, an old-looking samurai followed by a large group shaving his head in a stream next to them. Then he asks a monk to trade clothes with him. They follow the group and learn that a cornered thief has kidnapped a child and is holding him hostage in a hut. The old samurai, later named Kanbei, approaches the hut now dressed as a monk to offer food to the thief. When the thief goes for the food, Kanbei rushes in. After a loud noise, the next thing we see leave the hut is the thief who drops down dead, followed by Kanbei and the child safe in his arms. This catches the attention of the farmers who want to recruit him as well as the two other samurai. A young samurai named Kachiro that wants to be his apprentice, and a somewhat strange brooding samurai known as Kyuchi, or Kichio. In the Magnificent Seven, the three men sent to buy guns run into their own odd scene. A crowd that's gathered outside a funeral parlor, as the owner of the place tells two traveling salesmen the man in the hearse can't be buried today as an element in town refuses to let the man be buried. Through their discussion, we learn the salesman saw the man drop dead in the road with people of the town just walking by or over him, and felt so bad for the man they paid to have him buried. The problematic element is the men. Well, I'll just let the scene tell you.
They say he isn't fit to be buried there.
What? In Boot Hill? Why, there's nothing up there but murderers, cutthroats, and derelict old barflies. And if they ever felt exclusive, brother, they're past it now.
They happen to be white, friend. And old Sam? Well, old Sam was an Indian.
Well, I'll be damned. I never knew you had to be anything but a corpse to get into Boot Hill. How long's this been going on?
Since the town got civilized.
In the middle of commotion, a Cajun man named Chris steps up to drive the man down the street to the cemetery and is followed by another man named Vin Tanner, who rides shotgun, promising to defend it from anybody that would try to stop it. They make it down the road, only getting shot at once as the crowd follows, led by a young man named Chico. When they get close to the end, they are stopped outside the gates of the cemetery by 5 men. 2 draw their guns, but Chris wounds both men in the arms, forcing them to let the men finally be buried. After that, the villagers decide to ask Chris for assistance with the bandits. Now, both Chris and Kanbei are the ones that suggested how many men they needed to recruit. Although both don't agree to it at first, both would eventually join them as the individual leaders of their 7. Now begins the recruitment of said 7. There is some overlap with how the others were recruited, but let's start with the ones that don't. 2 that seem not to be repeated in the Magnificent 7 are Vin, the guy that ran shotgun with Chris. He agrees to come after his gambling lands him broke. Then there's Lee, a dapper man on the run wanting to leave the town and looking to make some quick cash, who simply appears in their room after hearing they were recruiting to go down to Mexico. In the Saven Samurai, there was Gorobi, who is recruited after passing one of Kanbei's tests, where the young samurai Kachiro would try to hit a samurai with a stick while hiding behind a door to test their reflexes. Gorobe immediately picks up on what's happening before he even gets close to passing the threshold of the door. Now the ones that do seem similar. There's the 2 that happen to be old friends of Chris and Kanbei. Shirijori is an old comrade of Kanbei who's fought with him in many battles and is happy to help, and does so without question, even when Kanbei tries to dissuade him by saying there's no guarantee that you come out and there really isn't a big reward at the end. Harry is Chris's old friend, but he is convinced there is a much bigger score here than Chris lets on, making it very clear he's doing this simply for money.
All right. All that's on top. What's underneath?
Only what I told you.
Gold? Cattle? Payroll?
Only what I told you.
Oh, sure, never mind. Just tell me when you can.
Harry, please don't understand me so fast.
I said never mind. I'm in. Dirty dog.
Hiyachi and Bernardo O'Reilly are found chopping wood for food. Hiyachi is a humble samurai whose swordsmanship is described as mediocre, but is accepted by his high-spirited personality, and the fact that, again, these guys are actually desperate. O'Reilly is an experienced gunfighter with a hardened exterior, hiding a much softer side under it. Then there is Britt, a stoic knife fighter, and Kyozo, an even more stoic swordsman. Both are challenged to a duel which turns deadly for their opponents after they claimed their practiced duel was a draw and they didn't agree. Both the men seem to agree simply because they want the challenge. And now we get to a special case of Chico in the Magnificent 7. He seems to be a combination of both Kachiro and Koichiro, the 2 samurai following Kanbei after the hostage situation, and he has a lot of scenes that mirror theirs. Chico admires Chris after he strolls downtown and wants to join him. However, after a test, Chris rejects him for being too green, the same reason Kanbei refused Kachiro at first. Later, Chico stumbles back in the movie completely hammered as the others are about to head out to the village. This is the same as Kiichiro, who does the exact same. Those 2 also follow the remaining 6 to the village, despite not being asked, just to prove a point to the others. When they actually get to the town, the people are terrified of them approaching and decide to hide instead of welcoming their guests. This leads to both Chico and Kyocho sounding an alarm, drawing them all out of hiding. Both men start to thank them sarcastically, then both men proceed to shame the villagers for hiding.
Thank you, amigos, for coming out to greet us. Thank you for letting us see your beautiful faces. Thank you, you chickens. You come running out like chickens. We ride for days to get to this nothing in the middle of nowhere. We're ready to risk our lives to help you, and you hide from us.
It's after this that they finally accepted them as their final 7th member. When they get in town, both groups find very different complications in said towns. In Saven Samurai, while they are looking for equipment, Kachiro comes strolling in with armor and weapons from the farmers. Kanbei and the others put together the only way the farmers would have this is by stealing it from dead or dying samurai, which nearly turns the other 6 against the farmers. This is when Kachiro has at them and creates one of the best acting scenes in either movie. It's also my personal favorite, saying that the farmers are cheating thieves, even murderers, but it was the samurai that made them that way. Kanbei then realized Kichio was born a farmer, not a samurai, even though everybody kind of expected this already. Nevertheless, this reignites the Seven Samurai's will to help the farmers. After that, both groups spend time building defenses and teaching the farmers how to fight. The time spent brings both groups of the Sevens closer to their respective villages. Another scene that is shared between Chico and Katshiro are when they have a run-in with their love interests. While both were goofing off in the woods, they run into a woman dressed as a man and mistook her as a guy trying to get out of work. Katshiro is a little more embarrassed by his actions, while Chico is a little bit more surprised, but decides to turn the situation into another chance to embarrass the farmers, as the reason she was dressed as a man was because the farmers disguised all the women as men, out of fear that gunslingers and samurai would assault them. In the Seven Samurai, the young woman was even one of the farmers that went out to recruit the samurai's daughter. Neither group seems to take offense to this though, since they agree it was probably safe to expect the worst from strangers. After this, the two youths start somewhat of a courtship with their prospective ladies through the rest of the film. Another couple of standout moments are in the Magnificent Seven O'Reilly becoming friends with the local kids, and when the Seven Samurai meet an elderly lady whose family was killed by the bandits after Kyozu caught Kichiro sneaking food to his girlfriend, who intended to give the food to the old woman. Things finally start to escalate as 3 bandit scouts are spotted outside each village, alerted by Chico and Kichiro. Now the Seven Samurai manage to capture one, which they let the elderly woman kill to avenge her family. After this, they start preparing for a larger assault, but this is also the moment where the film starts to diverge a little bit. The Seven Samurai decide to attack the bandits first by striking their base, where they keep all their food, loot, and captives they have stolen over the years. This is all in order to chip away at their numbers a little more, and also makes for pretty good psychological warfare. However, Kanbei is not entirely sold on the principle as they don't really have enough men to spare on a full-out assault. So only 3 samurai, Kyozo, Kyocho, and Hayachi, plus 1 farmer, Rikichi. They start by lighting the place on fire, cutting down the first few bandits that start running out. However, as soon as they start to retreat, a captive woman exits the burning building. Rikichi runs towards her, and when she sees him, she starts to cry and then runs back into the burning building as it collapses, with Rikichi trying to save her, leaving to Hayachi to run out to bring him back, leading to him being shot by a bandit with an arquebus. As they make their escape with the wounded Hayachi, the others ask who the woman was to Rikichi, and he admits that that was his wife, just as Hayachi dies becoming the first samurai to fall in this film. Later, after mourning and raising the banner Hayachi made, the bandits attack the village head-on in force. The samurai's first plan was to fortify the village and create a choke point that funnels the bandits into it. Then they set 2 lines, one to block the main group after they let a few bandits in to be picked off by the second line, basically beating them by attrition. The downside of the strategy is they couldn't protect the houses on the outside of the main body of town, forcing them to be sacrificed. Many of the farmers living there were understandably angry about their houses would be destroyed, and they even threatened to leave the rest only to be chased back by Kanbei. As the bandits burned them down though, those same farmers become more resolute about staying with the others, saying that they were just houses and they can be rebuilt. In the Magnificent Seven, Calvero rides right into the center of town with his men, and is confronted by Chris, Vin, and Britt. Calvero notices the new walls they built and say they can't keep him out, to which Chris replies they were made to keep him in. The other 4 emerge, flanking the bandits on all sides. Seeing this, Calvero tries to bribe them into joining him, which Chris shoots down, even offering a new deal to drop their guns and leave and they can go in peace. Calvero did not take kindly to that, and a gunfight quickly broke out in the middle of town. All members of the Magnificent Seven were fighting except for Lee, and when the bandits try to escape the kill zone, the farmers ambush them at every turn. However, Calvera and many of his men do manage to escape. After these first battles, the bandits try different tactics when they are assaulting the villages. In Seven Samurai, they would later try a nighttime attack, which is spotted by Kicho. In the Magnificent Seven, they try using snipers to pick them off, leading to Chico nearly getting his head blown off, only missing him by the skin of his hat. The Seven Samurai do take a more proactive approach when dealing with the bandits, such as when Kyozo manages to steal an arquebus and take 2 of the bandits out on his own in the middle of the night. Later, pestered by the admiration Katshiro has for Kyozo, Kichio sets out to do the same. He infiltrates the bandit camp and learns some interesting information alongside another arquebus. Chico has a similar scene with him infiltrating Calvera's camp, although his was actually planned. There both learned that both groups of bandits tend to fight them to the very last as they don't really have enough supplies or food to last, and they're the closest and weakest village around. Upon learning this information, the farmers in the Magnificent Seven now become split, with half them wanting to surrender and the other ones still wanting to fight. Kichio's escape turned out far worse though, as the bandits attacked just a few moments after getting back. A few bandits got through, causing panic and chaos in the center of town. A couple farmers were actually slain here, as well as Gorobi, the second samurai to fall in the film. It's after this that the samurai start preparing for the final fight, as the farmers break out their good food and drinks they had hid before in the morning. As the party goes on, Kachiro wound up consummating the relationship that was going on, only to be caught by their father, who is also one of the men that recruited the samurai to come aid the village. The father quickly begins to assault the daughter, because of course he's not going to pick a fight with a dude with a sword. It eventually spills outside, drawing a crowd, and is broken up by Kanbei. Everybody returns to their posts, only leaving Kachiro and the girl alone and silent in the rain. In the Magnificent Seven, not all is well either, as Lee begins to suffer from night terrors in his sleep, alarming some of the farmers that go to see what's wrong with him. That's when we get his backstory of him being a deserter and all the killing he's done, this leading them to fear that one day his enemies will finally kill him for what he has done to them. The whole reason he moved down to Mexico was so that he could avoid death a little bit longer, and that's why he hasn't really been fighting the entire time. Tension also begins to rise with the gunslingers even starting to think about cutting their losses. Chris shoots this down though, and to ease the farmers' minds, the Magnificent Seven go to surprise attack Calvera's camp with the intention of killing Calvera and ending it quickly. The only problem though is when they get there, the camp is deserted. And when they return to their village, they are surrounded by Calvera and his men hiding inside of it. Calvera reveals the farmers sold them out, and actually agrees to let them go, saying he is being practical as he doesn't want to worry about their friends or family coming for revenge. Because again, Americans have a lot of guns. Before they go, however, he then demands they give their guns over, but secretly whispers to Chris that he will give them back after they leave. This is just a show for the farmers, so they know who the boss is now. Calvera doesn't really expect them to fight for the people that just sold them out, or against the guy that really just let them go and has triple the amount of men than them. As they leave, a few boys that O'Reilly befriended want to leave with them, being ashamed of their fathers calling them cowards. To which O'Reilly responds with a literal ass whooping and gives them a lesson on what bravery actually is.
You think I'm brave because I carry a gun? Well, your fathers are much braver because they carry responsibility. For you, your brothers, your sisters, and your mothers. And this responsibility is like a big rock that weighs a ton. It bends and it twists them until finally it buries them under the ground. And as nobody says they have to do this, they do it because they love you and because they want to. I have never had this kind of courage.
After they leave and get their guns back, Chico gives a speech and reveals that he was once a farmer like them, and had everything taken from him by men like Calvera and intends to go back. This convinces the rest to go back and face them except for Harry, who thinks they've all lost it. Back at the Seven Samurai, the battle rages on, with now both sides slugging it out, giving it everything they got. As the horse-carried bandits ran through town back and forth, the people and samurai slowly begin to bleed them dry, using some of the tactics as before, as well as some of the weapons they stole from the bandits. However, the bandit boss sneaks behind them and enters the hut filled with women and children. From there, he fires his arquebus, fatally hitting Kyozo, who does not survive the injury. Kichiro, now enraged, charges to the hut to slay the bandits, and is eventually hit right outside the door. Kiichiro says F the bullet wound and runs slaying the boss before he goes down from his wounds. Kichiro, lost in the battle rage, is left screaming in the wind where the bandits are, only to be told by Kanbei they are all dead now, causing him to break down crying at the loss of his friends. The final battle in Magnificent Seven starts with the 6 gunslingers sneaking into the village. The bandits are still in to attack them by surprise. They succeed in taking a few out, and it soon turns into an all-or-nothing shootout in the middle of the village. Vin quickly gets wounded by being shot in the leg, and Chris is cornered. Just then in the nick of time, Harry rides back trying to save Chris, only to have his horse shot out from under him and then eventually shot in the back. Chris rushes him inside very quickly after Vin opens the door to a house for them to take cover in, and O'Reilly is shot in the arm as he tries to cover them from a roof. As Calvera and his men try to break down the door, Harry tells Chris he doesn't want to die like a sucker, and to be honest about there being a bigger take, to which Chris obliges. And this is my personal favorite scene in this movie.
We didn't come here just to keep and add a lot of corn and chili peppers, did we? It's really something else all the time, wasn't there?
Yes, Harry. You had it pegged right all along.
I knew it. What was it?
Gold. Saxon.
Sounds beautiful. How much?
At least $500,000.
Right, that would have been what?
About 70,000.
And soon Harry passes on, being the first gunslinger to fall. As Harry passes, the shootout continues. Lee manages to find and rescue the farmers that helped them, killing most of the bandits that were inside. Now that the farmers that wanted to fight are free, they begin to attack Calvera's men with whatever they can. Chairs, shovels, machetes, hoes, you name it. It almost looks like something out of the WWE. Unfortunately, Lee is shot as he looks on at the farmers fighting. A few of the farmers are shot as well, as is Calvera while he tried to shoot Chris in the back from a window. The other farmers that didn't want to fight now enter the fray as well. Chris then confronts the now dying Calvera one last time, and the only thing Calvera asks is,
You came back for a place like this. Why? A man like you. Why?
As the last of the bandits start to flee, Britt is shot, and so was O'Reilly, as he tried to protect the same kids as before. As the kids say sorry for what happened to him, O'Reilly only tells him,
We didn't mean to do it.
You see? I told you. You see your fathers? What's my name?
Bernardo. Bernardo!
Damn right.
After the battles were won, Chris and Kanbei with the other two survivors lament that they still lost the fight, as the farmers were the ones that actually won. Okay, so that was the Magnificent Seven and the Seven Samurai, and they both earned that classic status. Even despite Magnificent Seven being a sequel, it still manages to be true to the original, while changing just enough to stand out on its own. The biggest differences between the films is how the two groups of seven are characterized. The Seven Samurai are shown to be the underdogs, not the best or brightest around. Their swordsmanship is mediocre, some have never seen a battle, and one isn't even a real samurai. Even Kanbei himself, despite being in a number of battles, was never on the winning side. Kyozo is the only one that feels like they should be there as an unstoppable silent warrior type that's clearly more skilled than everyone else. This lack of experience, though, is why they keep such a close focus on both the numbers of the bandits and the samurai. With a couple of samurai dying early on before the last battle even took place, unlike in Magnificent Seven where they only started taking hits at the end. Every action truly matters. Every loss on both sides is constantly raising the stakes. The Magnificent Seven, however, are overqualified. All are trained and well experienced in the art of violence. They even outright trounced Calvera in their first meeting without so much as a scratch. So the question isn't can they win, but will they stay to win? As most of them are fighting for various greedy reasons. Vic, Harry, and O'Reilly are doing this because they're broke, or expect a bigger score, and Lee is on the run and needs a quick get out before his enemies find him. This is where Calvera's actions matter, as he is constantly testing them by giving them outs. He tries to bribe them and then uses the farmers to betray them before letting them leave, not expecting them to come back, as he assumes they just don't care enough to actually die and help them after they sold him out. Despite the Magnificent Seven's hardened exteriors, they are a lot more caring than we originally see. Much like Kyozo, but the majority of the cast in various different ways. Whether it's O'Reilly connecting to the kids, or Lee confronting his crippling PTSD with a couple of other farmers in the middle of the night, who give him some valuable advice on how to deal with this fear. Even Harry, the guy who was the most focused on the payout to the point where he asked Chris to lie and tell him he was going to be dying a rich man. This guy still ran to his friend's rescue at the cost of his own life. And Chris, despite being a very stoic and tough-chinned leader, agrees to lie with tears in his eyes as his old friend lay dying in his arms. All this just shows how caring these guys actually are, and thus we build more of a connection with them. In the terms of acting, I'm a little split. In Magnificent Seven, I do feel like we got a better sense of the whole seven. Every one of them seems to get at least one scene to show off their acting chops. Even the villain Calvera is more fleshed out and gives a much better sense of the threat the farmers are actually facing. The bandits in Seven Samurai we hardly see or hear talk at all, but Calvera has something of a mob boss thing going on, and just generally acting erratic, putting everybody on edge the moment he shows up. He's shown to be very devious and pragmatic, not crazy or narcissistic. Even outright gets the jump on the Magnificent Seven, only to lose because of his pragmatic nature and somewhat lacking the empathy that these guys might actually like the farmers. In terms of acting, some of the samurai seem to fall short, unfortunately, like Hiachi and Garobe. They did have a few great scenes where they made flags or had that nice little conversation between the two. However, it doesn't really stand out like Lee's PTSD, Vic meeting Chris on the hearse, or O'Reilly's speech to the kids. Heck, Garobe doesn't even die on camera, that happens off stage. That said, some of the best acting overall goes to Seven Samurai, with characters like Kyochi, who really carries and steals every scene he was in, playing the comic relief as well as the heart of the film. A lot of the Seven Samurai side characters also had a lot of great moments. It just feels like most don't get enough focus, although I guess that's a good thing that I want to see more of these characters. Those are honestly the biggest changes I can see in the movies. Again, these films earn the right to be called classics, and if you enjoyed a well-made story, I would highly recommend both films. To those that stuck around, thanks and good day.